Hi, I'm Tiffany, and this is The Balanced Life Redefine Success, Redefine Failure. I am starting a series on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I know this is written backwards, it's because I'm using my cell phone to record. Um, I'm really excited about this series. I want to dive right in and start sharing with you. This is born out of a request from some people when I was asking for their input on our videos, what they wanted to see, and they said they wanted things more practical. And when I was at a event in Dallas back in March, um, Joe Brown of Heresy Financial, when I asked him if you had, say, $20,000 and you had to decide what to do you stock up, do you invest, with what's happening in the economy and our world right now and what we've been experiencing, what would you do? And he said Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I've been meditating, thinking about that since the first weekend of March, and now it's almost the first weekend of July. um, and so that's where this is coming out of. So I'm going to share with you some really practical things each week that we can do looking at each section. Now, this particular model that they have is much more refined than some of the typical ones that you learned about in college, if you went to college or if you've read about this. It starts with the most basic physiological needs and goes all the way up to transcendence. This was from Wikipedia. It's the more refined version that he did. He initially did it in the 40s and then he later revised it. So let's jump in. What does this mean to you? You don't care about the theory. You can look it up if you want to. All right. So what this means is we need to prioritize our needs. So on these Wednesdays, I will be sharing, I'm going to read this directly so it sounds really succinct and clear. I will be sharing practical tips to make this a bit more interesting. I will be using, as my guide, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I will have a link to that in the description below, the Wikipedia link. I'll also have other links. So we want to move from the most basic needs and then moving all the way up to getting beyond ourselves, helping others. But I'm going to be talking about that at each level, really. But transcendence is like becoming something more and accomplishing that goal. So we'll be talking about goal pursuit and those kind of things later on. But for right now, what we're going to be focusing on is the basic physiological needs. So the first step to being prepared in any situation is making sure physiological needs are met. This is food and water, clothing and shelter at its most basic. So in order to do this, there's a couple things you have to do first. Think about the great toilet paper run of 2020 when people just went berserk and it's like, what do I need? What do I need? Think about when you know you have people coming over and you're in a big hurry. How do you prepare? You run out and buy whatever you can. You overbuy, things like that. When you're facing a situation like we're in now and you need, well, basically any time in life, but right now we have expenses going up. We have, thankfully we still have jobs. Back in 2007, 2008, there weren't jobs. And so how do you meet your needs when you don't have that? You didn't have all these stimulus checks. You didn't have all these things. The first thing you have to do, very first, analyze the resources you have or have access to. In some of my other videos where I talked about being self-employed, one of these resources was childcare. Can you trade? Can you barter? What skills do you have that you can use in exchange for other things? Bartering is a great thing when financiers are kind of crazy. So number one, analyze. Number two, consider how these things could be interrupted. I think all of us in the last 24 months have had a wake-up call that our jobs and means of income can, in many industries, be interrupted. You think about this in the summertime when there's thunderstorms coming through, or if you live in hurricane country, or if you live where blizzards happen. You think about what happens where I live in Ohio, Michigan, Great Lakes, Pennsylvania, Indiana, that area. We get blizzards come through and we laugh because everybody goes and buys eggs, milk, and bread. And it's like, and then nothing happens and you make French toast for a week. That's the joke. But you consider what might be interrupted. What is something that I can easily cook if I lose power when you don't have heat? We have a wood burning fireplace because if we lose power for any length of times, It used to get super cold in here. We had to have unsafe heaters. We had to leave. Like, I had to take the kids and go other places. My husband would stay here and pretty much freeze. We don't have water when we lose power. So all those things, think through what would happen if there was an interruption in service, if you have a rolling blackout, if you have a bad storm, if for some reason there's the gas issues like they had back in the 70s where you couldn't get fuel. How would you get to and from work? Is there a place you could stay? Don't panic and freak out, but take a few minutes and think about these things. Number 3, what is your backup plan? This is just being smart and being mature. You can't always assume that everything is going to work out the way it should, you want it to, it always has. So what is your backup plan? So what do you have? What do you have access to? How could it be interrupted? What is your backup plan if it is interrupted? When we lose power, we don't have water. So when there's storms coming across, we fill our bathtub with water so that we can force flush our toilet if we need to. You might have other things. If you live in the city, you don't have to worry about flushing your toilet, but you may not be able to cook. What would you do as an alternative? And it's not always order pizza, because if they lost power, they can't bring you food either. I also have a link. I keep saying, I'm really sorry. I just did it again. I just did a video. When was that? I think it was last week. When the going gets tough, the tough get creative. I'm going to put a link to that in the description as well. This might give you some ideas on things to consider. But continuing on with this physiological needs, the most basic needs. Consider on a sliding scale of desperation. So we start out thinking, okay, what if they run out of toilet paper like they did? Or what if things get more expensive? Or what if gas is more pricey? Maybe I can't go on vacation, or we have to do a different vacation, or maybe we have to do this thing differently. Maybe you think, well, if it gets worse, then I have to change this. If it gets even worse, I have to do this. If it goes worse, I may have to stop buying groceries and have these things. Consider a sliding degree. We don't need to be over the top, freaked out, terrified, hiding in our basement, but we also do need to recognize that there have been interruptions. We have the baby formula issues. We had toilet paper issues. We have had gas issues in our past. Things have happened, and we did have a Great Depression 100 years ago. So just kind of think through, what would you do in that situation, and consider what you might want to do and could reasonably do to prepare. Food, stock up. Buy 1 or 2 extra cans. Buy a little bit extra at a time. When something goes on sale, get it. You would do this anyway, just buy slightly more. I'm not necessarily filling up and creating a grocery store in my house, but I do have enough food that I have almost a month's supply of many of the things I eat and use, like toilet paper, which I always had a month's supply, even before 2020, but I make sure I always have that now. And you use the can in the front. I have some canned milk from a video I did on a recipe yesterday. You probably saw it yesterday. I put this in the front. When I buy new, I go in the back and I just pull forward. So when it's on sale, I buy extra. That way, when it's expensive, I have it on hand and I don't have to buy it till it goes on sale again. This is just good money ideas. So buy 1 or 2 extra. Think about cheap meals. I have a number of videos. There's a lot of YouTube videos you can find. The health benefits of intermittent fasting. Dr. Berg, B-E-R-G, Eric Berg, can speak way more to this. I mean, talk to your doctor, all that. I am not a nurse. I am not a doctor. I'm not a health professional. It's something I am looking into. I'm giving you ideas of things I've looked into. So if I need to change my diet a little bit, like when I was in France 6 years ago visiting my host family from when I was in high school, I was visiting them and I realized they ate very differently than me, and I ate way less food and I wasn't nearly as hungry. And so when I came back home, I started eating that way, and I helped overcome. I was dealing with some health issues prior to that I'd already gotten help with, but this helped even more. So I've looked at, it wasn't intermittent fasting, but I've looked into those kind of things. Maybe you need to look into how could you eat healthier so that you don't eat as much junk so you can save money. So there's an example. Water, what would you do? Like I said, when we lose power, we lose water. If they have rolling blackouts this summer or in the winter when we lose power, the way we've dealt with that is we have this big filter. It's a drip filter. I forget how many gallons it holds of water, but we keep that thing always full. So we always have drinking water and cooking water no matter what. You can consider solar powered things. I actually had an idea that if they think there are going to be real issues with rolling blackouts, I have a solar power panel battery and plug it into a dehumidifier, which then collects the water that I could then dump into my filter. If it was something that was ongoing, because it's summertime, it's humid, no problem. Stock up and store. I'm not keeping jugs and jugs and jugs of water, but I am keeping about twice as much as I used to. Clothing and shelter. So like I said, this is food and water, clothing and shelter. So considering clothing and shelter, in season, out of season clothes. Do you have them for you, for your kids? Do you have some stuff in case there's delays, interruptions, and you can't get clothes? Do you know where to get them resale? Do you have somebody you could swap clothes with? Those kind of things. Back in the Depression era, and even now, I mean, kind of with Airbnb and stuff, but people had boarders, people who lived in their home and paid a fee to rent a room and eat some meals and do something. Is that something you consider? Do you know if you can legally do it? Have you looked into any of those things? Hosting people. Are there other ways to make money? Other things you'd like to do? Get a roommate, whatever. So considering clothing and shelter, would you need to be somebody's roommate? I live in a house, and so I can't really up and leave it. But if you had an apartment, it might be easier for you to go and move. I know people who live in campers. There, especially if you live like in California and some of the nicer climates and things. But I looked into it, and you can actually convert a camper where you could live in it year round and pay somebody rent to be in their driveway. Crazy things. Be creative. I mean, think about it, especially if you're young and single. Are there things that you could get rid of to make room, to have room for things that you need? So really, it's about evaluating what you actually have. Eating some of that food that you've just had sitting on the shelf for the last year, go ahead and eat and replace it in the back. Get what you need and make a plan. Start to make a list. One thing I realized that I do a bad job of keeping on hand was lemon and lime juice. I mean, it seems silly, but when you need it, especially in recipes. And so I went and bought an extra bottle of each to have on hand. Things like salt, things like spices, flour, rice, just little basic stuff. Keep it on hand. So, but you need to write it down, because otherwise you're going to overspend. I have another video. I think it's coming out later this week or early next. I schedule these and do these in groups and then post them up. So I'm kind of sorry. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you get them when they come out if it's not up on my channel. But about planning ahead and avoiding overbuying, because I'll tell you some funny stories about things that I did there. My kids could rat me out really good. But prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. It probably won't be either one, but if you take the time to prepare yourself and prepare your family and have the things that you will most need, then like when the lockdowns happened, because I had done that, because I had plenty in savings, because I had my bills paid, because I always kept extra on hand, even though there was me, my husband, and 2 daughters living with us. And then we had 2 daughters who literally moved into their apartment the Saturday before COVID hit. Who we had just loaded up with a bunch of our toilet paper and our canned goods and our things, having no clue what was about to happen in the world. But even with all that, we were completely fine. We weathered everything with zero problem. We had food, we had toilet paper, we had fun together, we like each other. So it was frustrating, but it wasn't horrible like it was for some people. So if you prepare and you get yourself ready, then you will be able to weather that storm and be ready. That's what this is all about. I will see you more on the next one. Please share in the comments below some of your ideas and things that you'd like to see and hear about, and maybe some practical tips that you can share with us. I will see you next time. Bye.